All right, welcome everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order for the Corporation of the Township of Woodlands on April 12th, 2023. And I will start with roll call. Councillor Spoulos. Present. Councillor Bailey.
Here.
Councillor Hurst.
President.
And Councillor Goyda.
Present.
All right, and I will now begin our moment of reflection. All right, that concludes our moment of reflection. This way, question resolution for confirmation of the agenda, please.
The council approves the April 12th, 2023 agenda as circulated, and the council approves the additions to the agenda as follows. So consent item 6.1.5, questions received from council seeking additional information, and the corresponding responses provided by staff. Consent item 6.29, the ERO posting 0196813, and this is a review of proposed policies adapted from A Place to Grow and provincial policy statement. Consent item 6.30. ERO posting 0196821, proposed planning act, City of Toronto Act 2006, and Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing Act changes. And consent item 6.31, ERO posting 0.19-6822, and this is site plan for residential developments of 10 fewer units. And this is to propose new ministers regulations under the Planning Act in the City of Toronto.
Thank you. Can I move for that, please? Councillor Spoulos, seconder. Councillor Bailey, all in favor? All right, carried. Disclosure of pecuniary interests. I have one, which item number is that?
14.1.
I am disclosing a pecuniary interest on 14.1 as I was a former employee of the township of Woodlands. All right, and I believe we were going to move to administration 9.3.1. Is that correct, Ms. Whitebox? All right, so you have a resolution for that, or?
The council receives the verbal report and on-site visit at 128 Rock Road South. This is to begin around 9:15 a.m. this morning, and it's regarding the zoning amendment application for the property 128 Rock Road South.
All right, I gotta move that, please. Councillor Spoulos, second by Councillor Goyda. Questions or comments for the votes? All in favor? It's carried. All right, we will now go into the property. All right, welcome back, everyone. With council's indulgence, I would like to partially move to announcements in our agenda. We have Cameron Tuck here for to receive an award. I'd maybe ask Mr. Tuck and his family if you would like to come up to the table here. I'm not going to force you. If you're more comfortable staying in the gallery, that's fine as well. Welcome. It's good to see everyone. Thank you. So today I'm here to provide Cameron with his Volunteer of the Year award. I have it here. I'll come around and present it to you. And I just want to, for anybody attending, I want to point out that Cameron has made incredible contributions to softball and Woodlands. His leadership skills, athletic knowledge, and dedication of time and commitment to coaching have promoted the sport within the community, helping it grow, reaching out to our youth across the township. Very pleased to present this award to you. That's just a drop in the bucket that the Tuck family brings to this community. But baseball is probably your top of your list right now, but guys, I don't know, for those Game of Thrones people, I kind of use the analogy of little fingers. You dabble in a lot of things out there and you do it well. So we're very appreciative of everything you bring and how you brought baseball back to a level that's quite astonishing, actually. And maybe I'll give you a moment to speak of those accomplishments for the baseball community. You are also a sport of soccer and other sports, so I'll just give you the floor for a minute and I'll come around playing this award. I like putting you on the spot. I can do that.
Thanks for the warning on that. I guess the biggest thing is I'm super excited, right? I know our board is excited. We did more than just survive through COVID when we took on took off everything. I think we had about 30 to 40 kids playing baseball in Whistler before COVID. The board, along with myself, we had a plan of trying to get this up to about 200 registrants over the next few years, and we're well on our way now. I just checked on this morning. I think we're at 105 baseball registrants for this year. I expect we'll clear 120, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. The biggest thing is for us is the involvement. We have so much more involvement than we had before. I know we fought for keeping the diamond in Morriston going back less than a decade ago. We're very grateful for that because, you know, we booked that whole diamond is booked up for every night of the week this year. And I know Morriston Meadows is in the same boat, and I have a playlist as well. So we're very glad that those diamonds, none of the diamonds are gone, still here for us. Thank you for council for listening to me come in and get on my soapbox a couple of times and want us to keep those. The new lights, we're super excited. The Chase Place U11, the U9s and the U11s will be playing out of Old Morriston this year. The new lights are just something that are so needed. I'm looking forward to having that facilities down there. I said, we're just super proud of where things have come. I know soccer had a big.
Okay, that's enough.
All right.
Sorry, just kidding. I couldn't help
Soccer had a big push though, like soccer had a big push years ago here, and watching Bruce build that up was, I think it was one of my mentors, seeing how he built things up. That was something that I said, okay, we gotta do the same thing, listen to ball now, and it really came together. Yeah, we're super excited. We've got teams going to the provincials this year, and please keep your ears out on that because we'll make sure everybody knows around about that. We just found out they're going to Norwich in July. We just don't have a date yet, so we'll be down there for the provincials. No, as I said, the whole board, we have a great board, very dynamic board, very diverse board. We argue and fight like you wouldn't believe. It's like a whole bunch of brothers and sisters always there. But at the end of the day, we always come together and it seems that they nail it and get it really well done for everyone. So excited about the new year. We start at the end of May. So thank you very much. And thank you for having us. Very honored. Speechless on the board.
Thank you for taking time out of your day, the entire family. I'm sure Chase was very upset of missing some school to come here.
No, I got in trouble because I pulled him out of missing recess.
So we'll make it quick, but I'll come around and present this. Maybe we can grab a couple pictures. Everyone want to stand. Oh, come on, Jay. Here it is. Good job. I think that everyone. Someone taking you over here.
Thanks, much appreciate it. Thank you very, very much. It's very kind. Thanks. And I'll get you those notes later, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Yep, and then if you plan on staying, that's great. If not, we're going to continue with our agenda. So next, I believe we're on to delegations, 7.1. I believe that's Paul Roberts. Come back. And different topic, those are somewhat relative. I need to open up my computer so I can get my own. I submitted a large number of files for your review, but I think it's probably better if I just try and make the point of what I'm trying to get to. So it started with a letter to, first of all, I'm Paul Roberts. I live at 4457 Victoria Road South. And I also own the property next door, which is 4469 Victoria Road South, which used to be CBM pit and the TCAL pit. So first thing I wanted to, I put a picture in. You may be able to move down a little bit
in that picture to see that this is the amount of water drop we have had. And I'm standing at the water's edge and I'm 5'10", and I can't see up to the shore where the water used to be. It's 2 meters down. And just for relative frame of reference, it's a 300 meter by 500 meter lake. So that's approximately 150,000 square meters, 2 meters down, or 300,000 cubic meters of water loss. Just for that piece of information. So in the report that was that I obtained from Mr. Bunn, and the 2021 Aberfoyle Fit 2 annual monitoring report, and there's several pictures out of that report here that are somewhat that's the community. We go down a little further. This is the out of that report, this is the annual precipitation. This is different. So it shows that in the last 3 years, the annual precipitation has been drastically different than it has in the previous years. And in fact, in the report, it states that the historical water levels are at a 32-year low in the area. And the recharge is not fully responsible for this decrease in water. So even though the precipitation level is low, the recharge is not going on. If you go on to maybe some of the charts that are further down, keep going down to the graphs. So, and the next one is probably better. So you see it as the chart shows you that there's the seasonal variations in the water levels, but it's also significant to only look at the last 3 years. There's been a distinct change. In the report, it says that there's been a distinct change of low water levels without the annual recharge going on. So let's go back to the go back up for me. So the direction given to me by Mr. Bunn was to talk to Mr. Dugnac from MNR, as the MNRF, and he's the local rep for Puslinch. And he acknowledged my concern and said that I was to talk to Mr. Cummins, which is the MNR technical specialist. And when he pointed out, we can go back to the operation plan or bit number 2. There, if we can zoom in on that bottom right corner there.
You're familiar with it.
Okay, so what it states is that there's a contingency plan that's in place in the event that there's a drought condition. If the excavation below the water table should be restricted. And if this occurs, it's a contingency plan according to the higher level. In point number 1, I think it points out that there's a Conestoga and Rovers Associates plan built in the summer of 1990 that outlines this contingency plan condition. So my point is that this has been going on now for 2-3 years, and there's been no change or no response or no implementation of this contingency plan. If you look at these maps, the other maps that I put in here of Canada, these are reports from Agriculture Canada. And what the report states is that in June of 22, this specific area was in what was considered a severe drought condition. And that drought condition came through from June to July to August into September. And then in October, it became, you keep scrolling down through them, I can't remember which one's which, but you see that there with the SL, right, area is pointed directly at this area and it's red. That means it's now an extreme drought condition. And that extreme drought condition has continued from November, December, January, and now still in February. Even though we had lots of precipitation and snow, it's still considered an extreme drought condition in this specific area. So my simple request is that when you look at the report from Dufferin, there's also a contingency report, and it doesn't mention anything about there being an extreme drought condition or the need to respond by doing something different in the case of an extreme drought condition. So my simple request is that somehow I think that we in Puslinch need to be able to communicate to the MNR in the case of an extreme drought condition, and I communicated as well to Ms. Armour, which is the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks. Now it's referred to her by Mr. Cummings. And she has agreed that there should be some further investigation about this. And in the ability to implement this contingency plan, and she right now is researching what that contingency plan is. So all I'm trying to say is, I think we as Bushmen need to be able to communicate to the MNR if there's something that needs to change or something that needs to be implemented, because it doesn't appear to me that that is being acknowledged. And the fact that this report is a year old, a year is too long to wait in the case of something like this happening. If we're in an extreme drought condition, we need to be able to communicate that and get a response from the MNR as to what they would plan to do differently.
That's the trick part. Okay, that photo that was in the presentation, when was that taken? If it's in your.
October 22. I can give you an exact date.
No, so if you were to walk out to your property today, would the water conditions be similar? Or would have they?
They've come up with, they have, as the ice melts, there's an immediate rise of the water.
Yeah.
So it's come up about a foot right now. That rock is just on the edge of the water right now.
Okay.
But that's only the beginning.
You've seen some recharge due to the ice melt. So why I'm asking you that is, my family owns property down, on the Gore Road, in the south side of Gore.
Yes.
And we have, as part of the larger Fletcher Creek, I think, conservation component, and it was dry almost all of last year because of the drought conditions you're speaking of. And I use that property pretty regularly. We have an individual in the audience here that has the Mill Creek running through his property. I'm sure he's very knowledgeable on the water levels of his property as well. And I hadn't seen it dry maybe once in the past. And this was the worst year. Now I'm saying that with the amount of rain that we've had, we didn't have a lot of snow, so I'm not sure it's a snow mountain. But Mother Nature has reset our swamp. We went from 0 water to where we crossed it, probably 2 feet. So what my question line was, are you starting to see Mother Nature reset the recharging of the property? And what you've seen or stating is a few feet, it has come up. So half a meter, so we could calculate the water. So there is some replenishment, which is good to hear. We'll open it up to council, but what I'm hearing from you is you want the MNRF to investigate that the pit next door is approaching low water levels, or if they hit them.
Well, no, if there's a drought condition, they should be instructed to
Implement
cease
their contingency plan
excavation below the water.
and implement their contingency plan.
Yes.
That's the ask, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And also like to extend one more, I know the government has got an application in now to increase from 1 million cubic meters a year up to 2 million cubic meters a year. They're currently digging, my understanding is they're currently digging in the 200 to 300,000 cubic meter a year. Which is exactly the same as the volume of water level that I missed. It seems to me, but they're digging is what I'm down on an annual basis. It's just like when you dig material out, the water replaces it. And if they go to 1 million or 2 million,
Well, those comments can be stated when we'll likely see that application or we'll have that before.
so I
So
want to keep it in mind when that application comes through.
know some concerns staff raised with the initial, I don't know if we can call it an application yet. I believe they notified us that they were proposing to change it. I'm not technicality. I don't know if it actually applied yet, but. Okay, so Councilor Swiss, that you've heard the ask from the delegate.
Yeah, I don't have any question with the delegate, but certainly I think what we should do is ask our Environmental to look at it. They have an outstanding report to us with respect to the pit next door. The notes from staff was that they did visit the site, but we have not seen the actual report result of the site. So I would like to suggest that the information provided by the delegate be provided to Hardin Environmental in conjunction with the review of the 2022 report. In other words, look at the two together and specifically highlight the site plan note that says it's a severe drought at the stop. digging below the bottom.
More questions for the delegate. We don't have anything on, what items get to? Nothing?
Nothing on this agenda.
Okay, so, all right, we'll deal with it now. So we'll just receive. We'll go around the table and get
Sure.
to the counselors, and then I'll just give them a moment, because I have some comments I want to say about this as well. Okay, Counselor Bailey, for the
Thank you.
delegation.
Yeah, no questions for the delegation, but thanks for all your work. Like, I know you've done a lot of back and forth with the ministry, and you've probably gotten a lot further faster than we might have, because we're trying to do it from our end. So you've done a lot of legwork, and I think it's really important that we bring the comments to the Hardin Environmental to look at as well. I did have a question. I don't know, Courtney, if you know, but what is the process in place in a drought situation with the ministry and aggregate pits? Is there, you know, if there's sort of a process where they recognize a drought and then there's a reach out to,
So through you, Mr. Chair, I think it often depends on the license notes for that specific pit, whether there's like a triggering threshold that requires them to take certain action. So we did see the pit license in this case. So again, I think it's specific.
is it often on a reactive basis? So it's up to somebody to say, hey, this is a concern. We want you to do some action. Is that?
I may interject, the MOE, the Grand River Conservation Authority has threshold limits. And as each threshold is reached, they ask the high water takers to reduce their water taking by 10%, 15%, 20%. So that process is through the Grand River Conservation Authority. I'm not aware of process through the Ministry of Natural Environment.
I feel that if there's a concern around the operations, it would be captured in the site notes, then it would have to be highlighted to the NNRF about our concerns through either consultant review or the hydro G guy. I don't know if we're there yet. I'll just go around that.
Yeah, and then my second question again was to staff, if we have any idea of where, I'm not calling it an application, but where the different application process is. Do we have any more information on their process?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we did have a meeting with the pit operator, so staff had a meeting. We posed a number of questions, specifically around process, just wondering next steps. So, we were given some information in that meeting and are looking for some follow-up, so we haven't had any additional information with them.
So any comments we would have to wait for ERO posting as a process.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I think we're still looking to figure out what that exact process is.
It's just,
Thanks. Yeah.
Councilor Hurst.
Yeah, thanks, Paul, for flagging this. I think even I found the information provided was very educational for me to understand like the realities that we're facing. So I think echo my colleagues and just thanking you for the work. I think I would think where my head's going, and it's not so much a question to you, but more directional. Here's, I think I'd like to understand maybe the councillors Poulis's comments and what's Hardin's guidance in terms of year-to-year reports. I'd like to see that, and I think I'd like to better understand what the triggers are for actually implementing circumstances in the event of a drought. Because I think I don't have a very clear understanding of what the triggers are, and I can completely appreciate the drought situation. I think anybody that drove along in County Road 34 or 32 along there saw all the corn was twisted right up in the middle of July, right? Like not even harvestable in many cases. So I think, you know, I can appreciate under extreme drought conditions as a municipality, we should understand what those triggers are, and then in the circumstance that we know what they are, we feel that there's an appropriate time to trigger those. I would be supportive of that, but I think we need to do the legwork collectively before we get to that point. But I think this is an impetus to better understand what those are. I think. Thank you.
I want to get through the councils, but I want to say something that's going to help guide this discussion. have to get through the councilors first. That's good.
Thanks for coming today. I also found what you had, written to us about educational, and I think it's important that you flag it, especially knowing that, you know, if there is potential increase taking point, you know, an application or whatever we're calling it. So I think it's a good time to be flagging that, so that that's on top of our mind as well. But I would agree with Councilor Sabulis's recommendation, that we're waiting. My understanding is that Hardin did do a site visit. I'm not sure when, but we haven't heard the results of that. But we also haven't gotten the 2022 monitoring report yet. And so I would agree that I think it is prudent for us to have Hardin take a look at your information as part of that monitoring report. And from there, we have a consultant's report that we can then approach the local representative from the ministry and go from there in terms of. So I would agree with that.
Great, thank you. So as this council is aware, when we asked the ministry to look into site notes and possible concerns and contraventions, they're waiting months and months and months and months. We're not getting answers. My suggestion would be first is request that Kevin Mitchell attend our next meeting, May 3rd. And explain to council the contingency plan, how it works, what triggers it. Ask them if they're willing to implement it. Because of the concerns raised by your delegation. As well, we ask Hardin to review the data and also provide a report proceeding. And we also need that the results of the site visit from the previous concern. Kevin Mitchell, so I feel we should take the first step with Kevin Mitchell because we have so many delays dealing with the MNRF that we might be able to get to where we want to go dealing with them directly, but then start the motion of reviewing the reports and taking that next step. So. Turn it back over to Councilor.
I don't have a problem doing the two in parallel. Certainly we can. Have Kevin Mitchell, I think it's a good idea to have him explain that. And certainly, Hardin Environmental can be party to listen in on that and formulate his own opinion when he comes back from assessment of the 2022 report and what provision of the report that he's looking.
So I hope council will indulge asking Mr. Mitchell to attend May 3rd. Correct? Is it, you know, tell her you're busy. This is a tour. That's fine. May 3rd. So, and just understanding that it's not a assassination attempt with Mr. Mitchell, it's more information gathering on contingency plan, or they're willing to implement it just by a resident concern, or if we need to elevate it to the NNR. So we just have those answers first. So do you have a motion you'd like to?
I'd like to move a motion that Van Hardin be provided the information that the delegate has provided to us, and have them review that in conjunction with the 2022 annual monitoring report, and at the same time, Kevin Mitchell be requested to come to the May 3rd council meeting to provide an explanation of the site notes, specifically with the triggering mechanism for the drought conditions.
So let's move, can I get a second there, Councilor Bailey? The only thing I want to also maybe add is for our staff. Council had asked for some answers to some other concerns. I believe it was a neighbor to the east, their pond levels were concerning. And that triggered the site visit and some sodium infiltration. When can we see that report?
I believe I covered it in my head.
Did you? Okay. Okay, as long as that's covered. Okay, so second by Councilor Bailey. All right, do you need to speak to it? Councilor Bailey?
Yeah, no further comments on that. I fully agree. I think having Kevin come is a great idea. There's a lot of different questions, and I'd like to know sort of the process and how it works from their end, so that would help me out. I have another question though related to the motion on the floor, though. So
What's it related to? Their other application?
No, it was in relation to, I think Paul, you had mentioned that there's no monitoring
On our lake,
on your lake.
that's been brought up with, Ms. Mara as well as Mr. Goodwins.
And would you be willing to have monitoring on the lake if that was the thing? So I guess another thing I would like to find out from Hardin is if putting a monitoring well on
Just a
property.
measurement, there's no need for dollars to measure.
or a measurement, yeah, monitoring of some sort would just help with our sludge monitoring sort of network that he's trying to capture.
I don't know how to deal with that. I mean, it's private property, like who's gonna enter the private property? Who's gonna measure it? Who's gonna?
Recognition. If you look at the map on that presentation, it shows all the location of the wells, the pond across the road on north of the 34 is on there. Tests.
No, I'm gonna time out. What I'm gonna do is wait till Hardin comes back, because he's gonna look at the results, and then if there's something that's glaring, or if we still want additional monitoring on that property, do this concern with deal with that.
Or I'll ask him then.
Yeah.
Okay,
Just-
save my question.
I'd be happy to reference them on where I got the information as well, what the sources were. Because it is an allegation.
That's first.
No questions. I'm good with the direction.
Mr. Good?
I'm good.
Okay, so all in favor? Or sorry, I all in favor.
Got it.
Comfortable?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor? Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good day. All right, next we have a public meeting, April 18, 2023 at 6 P.M. Open house and public information meeting held in person at 23 Brock Road South by electronic participation through Zoom regarding the following matter. Proposed zoning bylaw amendment D14/WEL Wellington Motor Crate, 128 Brock Road South, Osage. Any comments?
Not on that, just the order.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I'll go back. All right, thank you, Councilor Schools. All right, now we'll go back there to the sentence. And the resolution, Ms. McBride, please.
The consent agenda items listed for the April 12th, 2023 council meeting, these are for information.
Move that, please. Councilor Hurd, second by Councilor Bailey. All right, any items to be removed? Councilor Schools.
Yes, 6.13, 6.25. 6.26. And the three that were added in at the last minute is, I believe there's 6.29, 30, 31.
29, 30, 31.
Yes.
Great. Councilor Bailey, any items?
No, I was gonna do 6.13 as well.
Yours?
Good. The ones I've identified are.
Councilor Boyd?
0.13 is already up.
All right, so we can receive the rest. I have moved seconder, so all in favor for receiving the remainder? That's carried. Mr. Schools, 6.13.
My suggestion is to circulate it to the OPP for comments and bring this, the comments back to a future meeting. I don't know the ins and outs, but, don't accept any other suggestions and drawing.
Any comments, councilors?
Just a comment at our state communities meeting on Thursday, one of the members is a local bus driver, and this very topic came up during discussions. You know, just how often cars are flowing past her, and the idea of a camera on there would be really, really appealing.
Yeah, I actually have prepared a motion to support the municipality of Northford. I am proposing that because I myself, our kids get on the bus on Watson Road. They have to cross to get on the bus. I've witnessed this exact situation happen many times. But in addition to that, I think we have many roads in the township that are arterial roads, high traffic roads, commuters traveling from other municipalities through that are in a rush. And I can see how this could be really beneficial to have cameras. We also have the same struggle with limited resources for enforcement of these kinds of things. And I do know that the Upper Grand District School Board made a similar request, I believe, in February, because they're also receiving complaints, and they're noticing the frequency of this increase. So my thought was to write a letter in support of the motion from North Perth. But I'm also, if it's valuable to get some input from the police prior to doing that, I would.
I'll just speak to it briefly. This conversation came up at county early in March, end of March. And I believe the Rose Committee is going to look at it, but I asked the inspector specifically if school bus has a camera installed now, not necessarily on the arm, but a camera in the vehicle, and it records an infraction of the stop sign. If that information is provided to the OPP, is that sufficient for them to investigate and possibly press charges? And I don't want to put words in the inspector's mouth, he's not here, but Bill's note version was yes, they will investigate. So to me, this is something the school bus companies can implement almost immediately just by installing cameras. I'm supportive of the resolution because it's asking the province to fund this program. I would have challenges if we were to champion this cause and try to fund it ourselves. So I just want council to hear that it doesn't necessarily have to be a provincial program to start some action on this. They can install cameras themselves, and then they can take the onus that if the driver sees somebody run the stop sign, they can go back to the prospective employer, download the data, provide it to the OPP, and they can investigate it. So there's still opportunities. So that's basically, I just wanted to know that I'd spoken to Inspector Thomas. Councilor Gordon, you have a resolution?
Yes, I am.
Mr. Chair, I have a resolution noted. The council received the consent item 6.13 listed for the April 12th meeting agenda, and whereas the township of Clifton shares similar concerns as outlined in the council resolution prepared by the municipality of North Perth, be it resolved that council of the township of Clifton endorse the resolution received from the municipality of North Perth and direct the clerk to draft an endorsement letter to be circulated to Premier Doug Ford, Attorney General Doug Downey, Minister of Education Stephen Lecce, provincial opposition parties in all municipalities of Ontario, and that council directs staff to forward the consent item to the OPP for comment and report back to council for consideration.
Councilor Gordon, seconded by Mr. Spose. Comments, Mr. Spose.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with receiving something positive. Say part of things.
Mr. Bailey?
Did you say what the resolution was for?
Cameras.
Sorry, I didn't actually hear what it's requiring. So requiring all school buses that have a stop.
Is support of the North Perth resolution, which states that council of the municipality of North Perth urges the provincial government to
Okay, yeah,
acquire the cameras
and it says the funding.
and the funding.
Okay, yep, no, great.
I'm supportive. I've seen it at the end of my lane too, so, there's.
Final comments, Councilor Gordon? Okay, all in favor? Councilor Stairs.
6.25 uses short-term rental tax classification. I know that we don't allow staff, we don't allow short-term accommodation, but staff are working on a short-term accommodation licensing bylaw. And my recommendation is that the tax classification for short-term rentals be included in this report for processing and report. In other words, when the bylaw comes forward, will be a company report, and this should be addressed in that company report.
Okay. I don't think that was a little shifts. Maybe a second for that. Councilor Bailey, okay, comments, Councilor Bailey.
No, I was gonna ask that this should be put in a file for when the short-term accommodation comes forward, so I'm in favor of that. That's great.
Or go too far. Mrs. Sand, do we create the tax classification, or does the province have to create the tax classification that we can implement?
It's MPAC that would follow what the province has created. I don't have I haven't contacted just the county in terms of, because they do have a lot of the tax experts. I haven't heard about this issue in the past, so it could be something that staff report back on as part of when the clerk's team brings this bylaw for council, just because I don't have that knowledge at this time.
So I'm just confused. So is that the intent that they look into it and see the avenue to create the tax class or?
What I'm saying is, as part of the bylaw, there'll be a company report. And we'll address all the pros and cons of this. At the same time, I'm asking that the tax classification be also included as a discussion point in that report.
Sorry. Councilor Hurst?
Comments? Supported.
Councilor Gray? My comments are that short-term accommodations are in our township. If we just go on Airbnb and whatever those other ones are, vacation by one, anyways, it should be from certain companies, but they're definitely in the township, and this can be a bold statement, but short-term accommodations are contributing to the housing crisis by driving up the costs of houses and properties, because without a proper tax classification, people can pay more for a property, rent it out short-term and quite a profit, and thus inflate the market. So I 100% support tax classification for short-term rentals as a tool to curb inflation and inflationary pressures and other pressures on the housing market, bring them more into line with what they should be. So I'm very supportive of that. Thanks. Anything further? That's yours.
Is there a process? I'm just looked really quick. We got 10 Airbnb listings in the township currently. Is there a process to follow up with them to post a bylaw being developed to address this issue?
So through you, Mr. Chair, our bylaw complaint policy is worded that the township is reactive in terms of enforcement. So we do not go proactively looking for violations. It's a resource component to it, but it's also the policy and the way it's worded, just not looking to find problems, but definitely waiting for those complaints to come in first. With that said, as we work through the proposed licensing bylaw for short-term accommodation, I think there's definitely opportunity for public engagement. Reach out to the public and make sure those who need to be aware of this can be part of the process and know that it's coming forward.
So, do we have a timeline when we would anticipate this process to be brought forward?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I would say that this is probably a bigger project because it will require an amendment to the zoning bylaw as well as a licensing bylaw. Right now, our zoning bylaw strictly prohibits short-term accommodation in any zone. So we would have to go back and take a look at that at the same time as the licensing bylaw. So opening up a zoning bylaw is a big thing. It's open to appeal. So I think we're hopeful for the summertime and looking at it in the back end of the year.
To build on that, if MPAC implements a tax classification, that can be implemented much quicker.
Through you, Mr. Chair, MPAC does not rely on municipal zoning for how they assign tax class to property. So it's not reliant on that process.
So that could be a dual stream type process as well. Councilor Goyda?
Okay.
All in favor? Thank you, Councilor Wilson.
The last time was reinstatement legislation permitting a municipality to retain surplus proceeds from tax sales. My understanding is that staff are going to oppose this to real tax. Do we have an issue with this? That we're losing out some on tax proceeds?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just we haven't, since I've been here at the township, we have been successful with collecting the tax arrears through the tax registration process. We haven't had to go all the way through to a public tax sale because the payment was received prior to the listing close date. So this has been forwarded to Real Tax, who assists the township with the tax registration process. And Depending on their answer, we could provide council with an update.
Councilor Willis, your interpretation of this town's resolution is that their request is to retain all of the surplus funds from the tax sale, or just the amount to cover their additional costs?
I wasn't clear on that, so, I think that staff going through to real tax to get a proper evaluation is the proper way to do it.
Proper evaluation of their property or proper
A
evaluation?
proper understanding of what this implications would be for us.
Yeah, because I would have concerns of supporting a resolution that would ask for all of the surpluses. But from what my understanding was that we weren't necessarily recovering all of our costs through, and that's the problem. I think they should be responsible, whoever goes through this process should be responsible for covering all our costs, plus maybe a bit of an admin fee or something along those lines. But I have difficulty if the town of Essex intention is to, because you're being bad, you're not paying your taxes, we're taking it all. That's,
I think it's important that we get the balanced view on this rather than supporting that wholeheartedly. That's what I'm suggesting is we get an assessment and stuff and report back to us.
And just further to the mayor's comment just about the like the costs. So we are able to add costs to the tax roll prior to the tax sale process. So we do recoup a significant amount of our costs. It's just the staff time that I would say that we're not able to add to the tax roll. So for the most part, we do recoup a lot of the costs, but we will report back to council if required after we obtain an answer from real tax.
okay, thank you for that clarification. Councilor Hurst?
My questions.
Mr. Wood? You pose the resolution?
Yep, over that staff look into this matter through our real tax and provide an update again applicability of to our situation and what costs can be covered.
Let's move by Councilor Willis, seconded by Councilor Hurst. Last chance. Any comments? Okay, all in favor? Carried. All right, Councilors, we also have items 29 to 31. Those are the ERO posting.
Yeah, my suggestion is that we have this provided to us late, didn't have the time to digest it. All the dates associated with these still allows us to have them brought forward to the next council meeting. And my suggestion is that staff look at these and look at the implications for us and have a sort of a mini report or a verbal report saying what implications are for. So there's one here, for example, that talks about rural properties expanding seminal boundaries and all that. And is that applicable to us? And if it is, that's great. And my suggestion would be is rather than have a county planner look at this, have an independent planner look at this.
Mr. Bill?
I think that's a good idea. I didn't have a lot of time to digest them either, so I'd like to have a little summary if that's sort of what's being asked. So that's relevant to post lunch, of course.
Supported my question.
Yeah, I just, are we
I'm not, we know,
suggesting that we have an exterior planner look at it prior to that, the next council
and
meeting?
have that ready for the council meeting, so at least we know what to say on these EROs and we know with respect to what our next steps may be for any developments that we have in Nimble, such as the expansion of Rodney Meadows.
Right, okay, yeah.
So I have a question of staff. I feel that would staff be comfortable reporting to us on the concerns with the ERO postings? Just reporting to us on the ERO postings. So what I'm trying to say, I'm not doing all of it, is that they're posted. You could say, here's our concerns with these proposed legislative changes. Do we necessarily need a planner to review that component? But then staff can report back on what those changes will mean to postage and the workload and you know, the fact that as Councilor Spools alluded to, that that could mean expansion of settlements, new settlements, that's too much work for our current staff. And we would require a planner. So what I'm trying to get at is, do we need a planner to review the ERO postings? Or staff comfortable looking at those 3 postings saying, here's our concerns with the one that it was in regards to site plan control for 10 units or under. Do we really need a planner to review that one? Or are you comfortable commenting on that to council next week? And the same situation for the other 2.
So through you, Mr. Chair, ideally, I think we would be in a good spot to have a planner comment. The timelines are a little bit tight. The one closes May 6th, which would mean we would have to have comments back at the May 3rd. We do not have a planner on retainer. So I'm a little bit concerned about the timelines, but I also know staff may be able to bring more information to council. Just we have various agencies that often comment on these. So different law firms that we're connected with give them summaries, things like that, that help with the plain language and impacts. So even if we're not able to obtain a planner within the timelines, I think staff could pull some information from the resources that make publicly available.
So this would be for the one that has the 30 days, which is 6821.
Yes. One is May the 6th, one is May the 21st, I believe, and the other is June 6th. So one, we have sufficient time, the other 2 would be May 3rd meeting.
As long as you staff have a bit of flexibility.
Absolutely. I can amend that to say that staff at their discretion engage a planner to will do their best to investigate the implications for it.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Bailey.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask for some clarification as to why an external planner. Versus in-house. But if we're leaving up to discretion of staff, then I'm okay with that.
So first,
Good discussion. I don't have anything to add.
Mr. Gordon.
Good.
I'm comfortable with that. I see these ERO postings as well. At least 1 or 2 of them as good news for the rural communities. And I'm supportive of a planner reviewing them and a planner helping us work through these new changes. My concern is, 3 and a bit years until there could be another election. And with new government, there could be new changes. So these impacts that are, I feel are going to be beneficial to the township, we need to get on this as quick as possible. So that'll be the first step, the staff reporting back, but ultimately it may require in-house planner to be able to guide us through this, this new legislation and get some Aberfoyle expanded, Morrison expanded. I don't know, identify a few of these little hamlets that are not currently identified. There's a lot of work that could be done in a short amount of time. So I look forward to that report. There. Any further comments before I call the vote? Give me a motion.
I don't have a mover second yet, but I can see what I heard it back. Just to make
Sure.
it reflects. The council received the consent agenda items 6.29, 6.30, and 6.31 listed for the April 12th, 2023 agenda. And the council directs staff at their discretion to engage an independent planner and report back at the May 3rd, 2023 council meeting regarding applicability of the proposed changes for the Township of Sludge Council for consideration.
Any for that? Councilor Willis, seconded by Councilor Hurst. Any comments? Councilor Bailey?
Nope.
Councilor Goyden? Or, I'm sorry. Councilor Hurst? That's gotta be. Councilor Goyden? I'm tired. I worked last night. So really tired. All in favor? Right, that's scary. But I believe that's the end of our consent items, right? And the delegations, I did the public meeting out of order. Reports, I believe we are on, is that correct?
And I believe we have our auditor here. And I just remember Mary.
That was the individual that we mentioned in the delegate earlier. Welcome, Murray. Can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Great. All right, so thank you very much for the opportunity to present the results of our audit process for the Township of Puslinch for the year ended December 31st, 2022. I will share my screen if I can here. It says it's disabled, so if that could be enabled, please, I will share my screen.
Good to go.
Okay,
We're not seeing it yet, but there we go.
there we go. You're seeing it now? Great. Okay, so thank you very much again. There's 3 documents that I'll walk through. These are all included within the package. The first one that I have on screen is our management letter. It's the first couple pages after the cover page for this report of your finance department. The management letter is our opportunity to communicate any concerns that we've noted in our audit process, any internal control recommendations or anything along those lines that come up as a result of our audit that we feel are important enough to bring to the attention of council. I will point out that it is in draft, as are the financial statements, subject to your review and approval of the financial statements today. However, we don't have any recommendations coming out of our audit process. So the process went smoothly. This is our second year being reappointed as your auditor as a result of the last RFP process, and we're happy with the financial reporting of your team. So thank you very much to Mary and the rest of the staff for getting us to this point and for the good work that they do in financial reporting for the township. So no recommendations coming out of our audit to bring to council's attention. The next document is the financial statements themselves. I'll walk through them on a fairly high level. We have a presentation, that's the third document that I'll walk through. And so the presentation, PowerPoint presentation, kind of gives a bit more color to the numbers in terms of some graphs and so on that highlights some of the key metrics. So the financial statements I'll try and cover fairly quickly. There's a whole lot of information within them, but I'll try and cover just some of the highlights. The audit report, again, is in draft, subject to review and approval by council. But we have been through our audit process and done the testing and analysis that we needed to do to be able to issue our audit opinion. So the last step is council approval, after which we'll remove our draft watermark and sign the audit report itself. But subject to that, our opinion, which you can see in the second paragraph here, is that the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. And that's the accounting framework under which all governments in Canada report their financial results. So it is a clean audit opinion. We've done the testing and analysis, as I've said, to get us to this point. There's additional information in the audit report on the responsibilities of management and those charged with governance, which ultimately is council. I would just kind of summarize them to say that these are the organization's financial statements, not ours as your auditors. And as a result, it's management's responsibility to perform the day-to-day financial reporting, of course, but also to make decisions as far as accounting policy choices, use of estimates, as well as ensuring that there are appropriate internal controls in place to enable fair reporting and to limit the exposure to any fraud or error. The responsibility of council is highlighted in this one sentence in our audit report, basically that you're responsible for overseeing the financial reporting of the township. And so obviously today's meeting and this presentation is part of your fulfilling of that duties. At the very end of the report, we have information on our responsibility as your auditors. Basically, all of those things that I highlighted were management's responsibilities. Our responsibilities are to assess those, do the testing and analysis, second guess effectively the accounting choices made by management, look into the estimates and those sorts of things and make sure that we feel those are all reasonable. And we've done that and satisfied ourselves that that is the case. Our report is tentatively dated today, subject to your review and approval. The next page just after the audit report is the statement of financial position or the balance sheet for the municipality for the year. We'll kind of cover a bit more detail in the presentation itself. I will just highlight a few key things here. If you combine cash and portfolio investments, because the municipality has the opportunity to move funds between one and the other. Basically, you're kind of in more or less the same spot as you were at the end of last year. About $9.3 million combined in cash and investments at the end of this year, very similar to last year. Taxes receivable are up by about 22%. I will say that's pretty consistent with what we're seeing across a lot of our municipalities. For whatever reason, these things tend to kind of go in cycles. And so I will say that many of our municipal clients that we work with, they're up in that same ballpark, about 20% increase year over year. Part of that will have to do with the timing of supplemental taxes coming through. If a number of them come through late in the year, that may bump up the amount that's outstanding at the end of the year. But generally speaking, it's not a concern. It's very consistent. And when we get to the graphs, we'll see that your taxes receivable are still quite low relative to what the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing considers to be kind of a risk area. You're well in the low range, so not a concern from that standpoint. Other accounts receivable are kind of comprised of HST rebates, grants, and those sorts of things, and they can vary fairly significantly. The decrease this year just because of fewer capital grants outstanding at the end of the year. In the liability section, accounts payable is up somewhat. That's just really a timing matter. Below that, the next several lines, we have some deposits, which are all very consistent or quite consistent year over year. And then deferred revenue is monies you've received you haven't yet spent. That relates to development charges, gas tax, park, recreational land funds, and so on. That's down somewhat, and we'll see that in the notes to the financial statements. Net of the financial assets and the liabilities is your net financial asset position. You can see that's up by about 300,000, so pretty close to where you were at the end of last year. Down at the bottom, we have non-financial assets, most notably your tangible capital assets. And you can see that that line is up by about $1 million, basically $2.7 million spent on capital asset additions in the year. But net of amortization of 1.6, the balance is up by about 1.1 million. And the sum of all of those things is your accumulated surplus. That balances up by almost 1.4, or a little over 1.4 million. Up to 29 million. Most of that is your investment capital assets. And we'll see that in a subsequent page as well. So the next page is the statement of operations showing revenues and expenses, and then the impact on your accumulated surplus of 29 million at the end of the year. As I mentioned, you can see that revenues are up fairly significantly. Part of that is taxation revenue, up in total about 10%. That's a combination of increase in assessments and tax rates, but also supplemental taxes in particular, up by about 60% year over year. And that's just because of changes in tax classes and those sorts of things. Fees and user charges are down somewhat. There's just some decreases in some of the recoveries that you have. Those can vary from year to year. And so that's not a concern from any standpoint. And then government transfers, those are grants coming from other levels of government. Basically a decrease in operating funding coming from the province as a result of decreased COVID funding. There's some COVID specific funding in 2021, but an increase in federal capital grants partially offsetting that. But overall, your government transfers, your grants line is down somewhat. And lastly, we have other income, and you can see that balances up by about 400,000. Primarily because of the increase in the use of development charges in the year. You drew more out of your development charges reserve fund to spend in the year, and so that increased that revenue line. On the expense side, you can see they are also up about $1 million, a little less than $1 million. A number of things that we'll see in the schedule. We have a schedule that kind of breaks it out in a lot more detail. But there was some added full-time equivalent positions across various departments, some vacant positions in 2021 that were filled for 2022 that has an impact on your staffing costs, as well as higher insurance and maintenance costs across various departments as well. So in total, expenses up by about $1 million. And the annual surplus on the year down slightly, but still a positive surplus on the year of about 1.4 million. I should mention of that 1.4, about 1.1 is your increase in your tangible capital assets. It's not free cash available. It's not even an increase in your general fund. I will point out when we get to a future page that your general fund surplus was quite small in the year. So that's funds that are available to distribute into reserves that I believe that the finance department will be presenting a resolution on later. Ultimately, again, your annual surplus of 1.4 million brings the accumulated surplus on the year up to 29 million. And we'll see the breakout of what that's comprised of in the schedules, but ultimately it's mostly your investment in capital assets. So that 1.093 million, you can see here on the statement of changes in net financial assets. That's that increase basically in your tangible capital assets. 322,000 is the increase in cash and other financial assets on a net basis. So that's a much smaller increase. But again, even a smaller portion of that is the actual general fund balance at the end of the year. So overall, your net financial assets, again, up by about 322,000 or 323,000. Last main statement is the statement of cash flows. I won't go through this line by line. There's a whole lot of information here. What I would point out is the line here at the end of the operating activity section. So positive cash flow generated from the township's operations of about 2.68 million. From that, you spent 2.62 million on capital asset additions on a net basis. And so your cash position increased by about 54 or 55,000 when we combine the cash and investments. As I mentioned, if you look at them together, both about $9.3 million at the end of the year in both this year and last year. Most of or a fair amount of the notes are accounting policy information, not necessarily something to walk through in today's meeting. A lot of information, it's required disclosures. I will jump to page 16 here. We get to more of the information on some of the balances. I will just point out that the investments that the municipality does invest in are in GICs, so very safely and conservatively invested, which should be of comfort to your property owners that you're not investing speculatively. The deferred revenue amount that I mentioned, you can see it's down on a net basis to about 3.3 million from 3.5. And again, this is development charges, gas tax, recreational land funding, as well as prepayments on tax revenue and so on. The development charges fund down somewhat. Again, you drew a fair amount out. You also spent a fair amount out of your gas tax funding, but your recreational land fund did increase. And so on a net basis, your deferred revenue is down slightly on the year. The budget note, I'll just highlight this 44,000 is the general fund balance at the end of the year. So that's the amount that's kind of available as a surplus from operations that's available for distribution into reserves or carrying forward into 2023. Again, more information in some of the notes. The other income note just breaks out that line on the statement of operations. Again, the primary reason for the increase being the development charges. You drew about 350,000 out of DCs in the year to spend. Lastly, we have the schedules. Schedule of tangible capital assets shows the various assets the municipality holds by asset category, including assets under construction that are not complete at the end of each of the 2 years. In total, 2.66 million spent in the year on capital asset additions, 1.57 million in amortization. So that brings up the balance in your capital assets, as I said, by about $1.1 million over the prior year. So then we have the schedule of accumulated surplus, that 29 million that I had mentioned previously. 22.3 is your investment in tangible capital assets. So most of the equity of the municipality is your investment in your infrastructure, and you can see that there. The general fund or general surplus that you can see here of 44,000. Again, that's the kind of operating surplus on the year. So very close to break even. You have some unfunded post-employment benefits that are just kind of an ongoing liability based on actuarial reports. And then we have the reserves, and you can see the reserve balance is up by almost 900,000 on the year to 6.7 from 5.8 million the year before. Lastly, we have the schedule breaking out revenues and expenses by department. On the statement of operations, we showed revenues by type, so taxation, fees, and user charges, and so on. We showed the expenses by department, so this kind of gives more detail just to show how the revenues are distributed across the departments and how the expenses are distributed across expense types. Again, if you compare 2022 to 2021 down below, increases primarily in the top 3 lines. But again, for reasons that I mentioned, primarily staffing, because of vacancies in 2021 that were filled throughout 2022, as well as a couple of full-time hires. Materials and supplies and contracted services increasing because of some professional fees increases, as well as insurance and things like that. Some of the maintenance costs in the transportation and protection departments in particular. So those are the financial statements. I'm happy to take any questions now, or I can jump into the presentation. Again, just giving a bit more information to the financial statements that I've covered.
I'll just maybe ask quickly here if anybody, any of the council members have any questions around the financial statements prior to going on the slide deck. You do?
Question.
Councillor Bailey?
Thanks, Murray. I just have one question, and it's in regards to page 10.
Okay.
F, intangible capital assets. I'm just noted that it said natural resources are not recognized in the municipality's financial statements. Can you comment on that, or do you know if there's if there is up and coming or going to be any sort of monetary value placed on natural resources?
I'm not aware of any changes to accounting standards that would require that. So no, I mean, those sorts of things, those intangible capital assets are generally things that are difficult to value unless they were specifically purchased by the municipality. So generally speaking, they wouldn't be reflected in the financial statement. So that accounting policy note is just indicating that that's the case.
Okay, and then just my another question was in the tangible capital assets, where do sports fields fit in to those categories?
Sports fields would generally be in land or land improvements, which generally land is not specifically amortized at all. Land improvements sometimes would be, if you're talking about kind of equipment to enhance the land itself. You know, goalposts, facilities at some of your sports fields and so on, they would be kind of separated by furniture and equipment or buildings or whatever the case might be, based on the installation in question.
And the specifics of what's needing. Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. I believe it was asked by one of the council members, but I want to ask it also. On page 12 of your report, it says recreational land, that 1.121 million, is that the parkland dedication reserve balance?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I wanted to confirm that. And maybe this is a question for Ms. Hassan. Of that 1.121, how much of that is already allotted to projects?
I'll look into that.
You can answer that later, but I'll come back to you if you could, please.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no problem.
Murray, back to you.
Okay. Great. Okay, so these graphs we've added, or the graphs that are coming up in the upcoming slides, added to give a bit more context. Again, the financial statements, there's a whole lot of information in them. It's hard to kind of really glean any kind of perspective or value from them, just in the way that they're required to be presented. So we have prepared this presentation just to kind of highlight some key metrics. So I'll do that, but also talk about kind of the audit process and where we're at as well. Really quickly, in terms of our audit overview, our final materiality for our audit was 225,000. That's a very slight increase over last year. I think last year's audit or materiality was about 210,000. That's the number that allows us to sign off on our audit report, because we say that the financial statements are materially correct, and ultimately that means we need to kind of assess what would be considered material or significant enough. The reason or the rationale for what that $225,000 amount is, it's an amount that we consider to be significant enough given the size of the municipality that it might impact decision making at the council level or at the senior management level. In other words, that significant decisions or strategies may need to be kind of revised if there was kind of an anomaly of that sort of magnitude. Amounts below that we generally consider to be kind of more operational, which isn't to say that we don't kind of consider transactions below that amount. We look at kind of much smaller transactions over the course of our audit process. But ultimately, when we're signing off on our audit report, we need to ensure that there's the accumulated misstatements that we might have uncovered in the audit don't get close to that amount, or we won't be able to sign off on our audit report. I will jump to the second last bullet, say that we had no adjusting entries and two very minimal unadjusted differences in our audit. So those are kind of amounts that are so insignificant that we don't even kind of reflect them in the financial statements. Those are minimal amounts. But that as a result of our audit, we didn't uncover any entries that need to be made, again, as a result of the good financial reporting done by your finance team. We didn't have any change to any of the audit process or plans that we had communicated to council in our pre-audit letter. As you may recall, we sent a letter out in the fall kind of discussing our audit process. And so we had no significant changes as a result of going through our audit process to what we had communicated at that time. No significant internal control deficiencies or disagreements with management or anything along those lines. And no known independence issues. So as auditors, we need to be independent of the municipality in order to kind of form our unbiased audit opinion, and we have no issues with that. We have no vested interest in these financial results. In terms of our audit report, again, I commented on this already, but we have conducted our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, and it is a clean audit opinion that the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. Some of these slides I'll gloss over fairly quickly. I've already talked about the statement of financial position, which you can see here, and I've talked about kind of some of the variances in terms of cash and investments and so on. But as we get into some of the subsequent slides, you can see some of the context that I'm talking about. So the township's cash position, cash and cash equivalents, including those investments at the end of the year, about 106% of your cash outflows over the year, which means that if you had no cash coming into the municipality, you'd have enough to cover the operations of the organization for the coming year. Without bringing any cash. Obviously, that would put the organization in significant financial cash flow crunch. So you will not want to do that. And most of those funds that the organization has are in reserves and reserve funds for future expenditures. But this is just showing that the organization is in a strong financial position at the end of the year. It is a little bit lower than the average of our other municipalities, but still in a strong position and not remotely a concern from our standpoint. I will mention with these graphs, this graph and the graphs to come, we haven't completed many of our municipal audits. This is actually the first council meeting I'm attending for the 2022 year. So where we have or we have reflected the activity of some of our municipal clients in some of these graphs for 2022. But some of the municipalities that we audit, we aren't at the stage where we can kind of confidently say that their numbers are what they are at the end of 2022. So we've kind of used 2021 as a proxy. So 2022 numbers for the average of our other clients may not be entirely perfect, but it still should give you a good means of comparison. So taxes receivable, as I mentioned, did see an increase this year. I did mention that looking across our other municipal clients that they did have comparable increases. That is not reflected here. You can only see an increase in the blue line, which is the average of our other clients, very slightly. That's because many of them we aren't at the point where we can kind of communicate that and confidently say that their taxes receivable are up. However, again, anecdotally, I've looked through several of our files to kind of make that comparison as a result of a discussion we had with your management team. And about 20% seems to be the norm across all of our municipal governments. More importantly, though, the green line here, which is the township of Puss Lynch, you can see that it's well below the average for other municipalities anyways. So even if this blue line were to increase more significantly, which I think it will as we get more municipal audits completed, you're still well below the average for our other clients. I would also point out the Ministry of Municipal Affairs risk considerations. Anything below 10% is considered to be low risk. You're at 5.8, so you're kind of almost half that even. That's as a percentage of the total tax levies that you raise on behalf of the municipality itself, as well as the county and school boards. 5.8% is a really low number, so that's great. In terms of tangible capital assets, we're comparing to total tax revenue to try and normalize for the size of our average municipal clients. Your capital asset additions down somewhat this year, but still in line with where we're kind of seeing our other municipalities at about 53% of your total tax revenue. And as we get into subsequent slides, we'll see that you're spending fairly significantly and I think quite reasonably on your capital asset additions in the past several years. This slide shows capital additions in blue over the last 4 years. Green is what you've budgeted and yellow is your amortization. The reason that the green, and this is consistent across all of our clients, the reason that the green shows more budgeted than actually spent as the projects get delayed and deferred and, or funding isn't received or whatever. And so this is kind of invariably the case. Oftentimes what happens is, you budget for a project to happen in 2021, it doesn't happen. And so when you're budgeting for 2022, it also appears in your capital budget for 2022. So there's kind of a bit of a duplication on the budget side. But comparing the blue to the yellow, I think is where we look at as accountants looking historically. If your additions are outpacing your amortization, which you can see that they have been over each of the last 5 years, that's a good indication the municipality is doing its best to stay on top of its infrastructure needs. And again, you spent fairly significantly in excess of your amortization. So I think that's quite a positive. The next slide just shows where those capital asset additions are funded from. In your case, you've had some success with getting some capital grants. That includes, excludes amounts drawn out of your gas tax and development charges. So these are other capital funding sources in purple. This green color is from reserves and reserve funds. Those are discretionary reserves and reserve funds. And then the green, the lighter green is your obligatory reserve funds. So again, most of your capital assets funded from reserves and reserve funds overall. Statement of operations, again, I've kind of covered some of the highlights. So I'll just move on to some of the graphs. Expenditures by department. You can see that about almost 40% of your expenditures from your transportation department, 20% from protection, 24% from general government. And as we get to the next slide, you can see the comparatives over the last 5 years. This is, you can see there's a fair amount of consistency from one year to the next. That's no surprise. Obviously, there's kind of annual variations, but it's generally pretty close. I would just say that this is kind of fairly consistent with what we'd expect to see across our other municipalities, with the caveat that, you know, our municipal clients vary fairly significantly in their operations. Some of them have kind of water sewer systems. Some of them have their own police force. Some of them have their own fire department. Some of them contracted out. So that may impact the percentages a fair amount. But generally speaking, this is pretty consistent with what we'd expect to see across our other municipal clients. Touched on the statement of changes in net financial assets when walking through the financial statements, as well as the cash flows. Again, pretty consistent year over year on those fronts. And then the schedule of accumulated surplus shows kind of the sources of, the makeup of that accumulated surplus of 29 million that I touched on. Deferred revenue, again, I covered this one in the notes. Development charges, gas tax, the parkland in recreational land reserve fund, and so on. But then we get to the graphs, and so this is where, again, some more of the context here. Township of Puss Lynch's reserves and reserve funds are very comparable to what we're seeing across our municipal clients, about 190% of your total tax revenue. So in other words, if you take your tax revenue and double it, that's about the amount that you have set aside in reserves and reserve funds. This does combine your discretionary reserves as well as those obligatory reserve funds, your gas tax, development charges, and so on. Basically being kind of the sum of all of the funds set aside for future capital and other expenditures. And you're kind of right in line with where we'd expect based on our other municipal clients. So that is the kind of end of the presentation in terms of next steps. We do need to have council approval of the financial statements in order to finalize them. As a result of your approval, should you see fit to approve them today, we'll get management to sign the representation letter that allows us to finalize the financial statements. And since we are at mid-April, we're well in time for the township to submit its financial information return in time for the May 31st deadline date. So those are my comments. Happy to answer any questions, and I'll stop sharing now, but I can jump back to anything that council may wish to discuss.
Thank you, Murray. Councilor Spose.
I don't have any specific questions. The questions that I had were answered, and I just want to extend a gratitude to Mary Hassan and her finance team for another great audit.
Thank you very much. And I would just like to thank Morella, Michelle, and Sarah, and staff that have been very cooperative in getting the audit items to the auditors on a timely basis. So thanks to everyone involved.
Councilor Bailey.
Yeah, no questions. Thanks to Mary and the team. It sounds like we're one of the first reports coming forward. So that's great. Thank you.
Councilor Hurst.
Yeah, I'd echo my colleagues' compliments to a clean audit statement. I appreciate the level of detail in the presentation, and I would comment, I also appreciate the comparative nature in the presentation, so that, you know, as councilors here, we can compare ourselves to other, you know, like-minded or similar municipalities from a ratio standpoint. So I'd see that as quite valuable, and I would encourage that in the future. So thank you.
Yeah, again, I just want to echo the gratitude. Thanks to the auditor for the work. And I just want to point out that I really appreciated that you pointed out in your cover letter all of the finance team members by name, Mary, Morella, Michelle, and Sarah. I think we are very fortunate here in the township to have a really competent team in finance, and so it was nice that they got to be recognized individually in the actual audit letter. So thank you for doing that, and just reiterating thanks to the finance team for all their hard work getting this done and getting it done quickly.
Yeah, great job by everyone. We really appreciate all the hard work that is done in the finance department. Mrs. Sam, would you be able to give me that information that I asked for, just maybe an email?
Actually, I have it available right now if you'd like. So we have 1.4 million of withdrawals. That's based on the 2023 capital budget and forecast. And it includes the capital carry forward projects that were approved in previous years that have not yet been complete.
That's strictly out of the Parkland Dedication Reserve.
Yes,
We only have a balance of 1.2.
that's as of December 31st, 2022. So this is for the capital budget and forecast from 2023 to, I believe, 2032. And it also includes any projects that were approved in previous years.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. Resolution.
The report FIN 2023-013 entitled Audited Financial Statements for the year ended December 31st, 2022 be received. And the council receives the presentation by Murray Short of RLB LLP regarding the 2022 Township of Plissonge financial statements, and the council approves the following documents from RLB LLP. A, the audit report, to the members of council dated April 12th, 2023, and B, financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2022.
Can we move it back, please? Councilor Spillis, seconded by Councilor Hurst. Any questions or comments? All in favor? It's carried. All right. Thank you, Murray. Thank you.
Thank you.
Finance team. All right, I believe we're on to 9.2.2. That is, this is Sam again.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is just an annual report that's required in accordance with the Municipal Act, Section 407 of the Municipal Act, in an extenuating circumstance that the township would be required to borrow on a temporary basis.
Watch your resolution, please.
The report FIN 2023-014 regarding the 2023 temporary borrowing bylaw be received, and the council get 3 readings to bylaw number 2023-019. Being a bylaw authorizing external temporary borrowings of $1.5 million in the year 2023.
Yeah, move for that, please. Councilor Bailey, second by Councilor Hurst. Questions, comments? All in favor? It's carried. All right, I believe we're on to 9.3.2. It's your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This report is in relation to extending our current animal control services agreement with the Cambridge District Humane Society. The report outlines some changes to the contract that are being proposed for the next 2-year term. And those are summarized on the first page of the report. And there's a bylaw as well that's included authorizing the contract documents to be signed. If there's any questions.
No, someone. Questions, Councilor Bailey?
Yeah, I just had a question. I'm just wondering if there's any feedback on any repetitive complaints or anything from residents regarding the service that council needs.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there are not. The community has access directly to Cambridge District Humane Society through an email, as well as they have a phone system where they can make complaints or contact with Cambridge District Humane Society, and we've not received anything significant related to that service or complaints about it.
So it is a direct contact to that service. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Councilor Hurst?
A question and a comment. Is township staff provided an annual usage report from Cambridge Humane Society in terms of the number of calls, number of rescues, number of, the use level or service level? And I'm just curious, and I didn't see that in the report. Maybe that's something that happens and it just wasn't captured, but I'm curious if that can be shared. And if it isn't, that would be something I personally think would be at least valuable to have them provide on an annual basis as part of the arrangement.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So it is in the agreement where they are to provide monthly statistical data to the township. In addition, they do have access from a licensing perspective to DocuPet. So they do have access to that system. I would say that, the tracking mechanism, is going to be much improved using Cloud Permit. Right now it's through an Excel spreadsheet and just manual tracking. So I think those reports that, can be provided more frequently likely than annually to the council, just, now that we'll have Cloud Permit up and running for our bylaw modules.
Thanks. I think, not sure, I need to see it monthly, but I think on an annual basis, or at least a semi-annual basis, it would be interesting to spread fee for service. And I think the only other comment was just in terms of the mileage, 72 cents per kilometer seems quite excessive. You know, I just redid ours. The federal government rate 68 cents. It is what it is. It seemed like a very significant jump compared to other, you know, generally the federal government rates like the high end of the spectrum. So this exceeds that. Just a comment.
Your resolution?
Yeah.
Did you? Oh, sorry. Do you have any?
The council receives report, ADM 2023-017 regarding the proposed animal control services agreement with Cambridge and District Humane Society, and the council gave 3 readings to bylaw number 2023-020, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the required contract.
Move for that, please. Mr. Hurst, second by Councilor Spools. All in favor? It's carried. All right, 9.3.3. This was once.
Yes, so thank you, Mr. Chair. This report relates to the Human Resources Service Agreement. This is a shared service for HR, human resource services that we've had with Center Wellington, I believe since 2021. And this is adding the health and safety aspect of the human services to this contract to make it more of a full-time role versus the part-time shared employee status that we have currently with Center Wellington. So this has gone to Center Wellington Council and was approved by their council. So we are the next step in the process in terms of Usage Council considering this contract. The estimated date that they feel they'll have a new employee recruited for this role is June of this year. So again, once this is approved, they would have to do that recruitment for the role. We will be adding a new individual to Center Wellington's organization. And this was considered during the 2023 budget process at council. And that's detailed throughout the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anybody? Mr. Spools?
Just a question, it states that the human resource person will work out of Plus Lunch. Is that correct? Correct. So with our limited space that we already have, how is that going to be accommodated?
So through you, Mr. Chair, this person, as I understand it, will report directly to the CEO. So our work from home policy indicates that the supervisor and the CEO will be able to outline what that work from home arrangement looks like. So right now, most staff are on a 50% work from home if that works for their position. So I would imagine that would be similar for this position. And again, we're kind of spread out within the township. So we're doing a lot of hoteling at different stations. So I'm assuming that's.
And then just for clarity, so council's approving the agreement today, but if there's need for an amendment ever in the agreement, that's just handled through CAO, not through council.
So through Mr. Chair, a lot of our bylaws authorizing contracts allow for a little bit of flexibility so long as there's no budgetary impact. So if there's some changes that arise that don't have an impact on budget, then it would be something that is done by staff and wouldn't have to come back. I think that's all.
Any questions?
I think we were.
We're
We don't have any person.
moving for that then. Councilor Spools, Councilor Boyd. All in favor? 9.3.4.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this report relates to the proposed council code of conduct and complaint protocol. Council and committees received training on April 4th. From our integrity commissioner, these documents have been drafted and are being proposed by the integrity commissioner for council to adopt. Of course, we have a code of conduct and a complaint protocol in place that's existing, that's been in place since it was required by legislation. And these are attached to the report as well. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Questions? Resolutions.
The council receives report ADM 2023-019 regarding the proposed council code of conduct and complaint protocol, and the council adopts the code of conduct and complaint protocol for members of council and local boards.
Gonna move for that, please. Commissioner Hurst, second by Councilor Goida.
Yep, sure. I'm paying attention.
All in favor? Carried. We're on to correspondence. 1, is that correct? Resolution for that one, please.
The council receives the correspondence item 10.1 regarding the County of Wellington response to Township Council resolution regarding Lake Road reconstruction and project details and speed limit changes.
Can you move for that, please? Mr. Goida, second by Councilor Spillis, questions or comments? Councilor Spillis.
My understanding that there is going to be a approval required by the county council with respect to implementing these speeds as proposed in the by staff. This is county staff, road staff. And I was wondering what the process would be. I had a conversation with Council Boomer, and my thought process was to suggest that he and you, when the matter comes up before council, that you raise that, the issues that we specifically raised, to see if there's any appetite to consider any of the points that we raised in the correspondence.
Yeah, it's my understanding that the bylaw will come to Roads Committee in September. So I would request that we just correspond with Councilor Bulmer, and he remind myself, and we can both take this ask to the Roads Committee in September, which would then ultimately be in front of County Council at the end of September. So I don't know how you want to approach it, but
So would you want us to make a resolution that we ask you and Council Bowman to bring this matter forward? Or when the matter is being considered by the county council, would that be appropriate?
Well, why don't we just draft a resolution that is sent to the September Roads Committee to consider our request, and then Councilor Palmer and I attend. Sure, so does that work? I think that would be best, and it's on the agenda for the Roads Committee, and then that gives us 2 kicks at the can. We advocate for the Roads Committee, depending on the result, then we have one more opportunity in September, then the bylaw will be adopted.
So I'd like to make a motion that staff resubmit our original request to the county roads committee and to the county council
For their September meeting.
for the September meeting when the bylaw for the speech is being discussed.
So this is just some technicality, but if I submit it to the Roads Committee for September, it would automatically be on the county.
Fair enough, then I would just leave it at the roads committee.
It's only when I review this. And it's the speed limit component, right? The transition.
Councilor Gordon made a couple of good points. He was suggesting stop signs at 2 of the roads. And you suggested a test period. And I suggested a graduated speed limit. So we have 3 items on there. One of them has two something.
So you want, I just want to clarify, because you want all the ones.
All the ones we get for consideration. I think it's important. We all did our due diligence. We asked the what they consider. We got a staff response back. I think that we have to take it to the next level.
Okay, so that's smooth, right? Need a second, please, Councilor Brady. Councilor Bailey.
I have a question, but not related to that motion.
What's the
I
question?
do that.
To the report, 10.1.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. So it's more, and I don't know, this might be a question for OPP, but just based on all the resident comments around the speed limit not being adhered to, and comments around OPP enforcement. I'm just wondering what the internal process is for when a bylaw speed limit change happens, to how the OPP are notified, and then how that can impact the OPP monitoring that the residents are requiring or requesting.
Sorry, so. You sound like you might have some.
Well, no, I would think that, as part of the road change, the OPP would be involved in enforcing everything.
It's similar to any other speed limiter or.
Perhaps, we can ask that, clarification be provided that the roads committee and stations are made, what is the nature of the enforcement?
I
I'd
don't,
like to not assume it's just going to happen. So, I mean, we've had a lot of comments through the, the public input process. And that was loud and clear what they were wanting and hoping for. So I'd like just to be able to act on that and just say, look, we're changing the speed limits in this area. Can you, help monitor that?
I think the more appropriate place for that question to be answered in police services board. Versus the roads committee, so. So I'm gonna just pause you. Let's just deal with the motion council schools put forward to put our three concerns to the roads committee, then I'll just come back to you.
Okay.
Concerns?
I'm supportive of Councillor Poulis's motion. I've received feedback from residents that are, continue to be concerned with the proposal. I think the information that was provided in this communication is okay, bring it off the level, and I think that's what we need to do. So I'm supportive. Nothing to add other than I think this is important.
Actually, I'm gonna back though. I'm gonna take your concern as a friendly amendment to your motion, just to add on to it that we also correspond with police services board, the completion of construction, I don't know if I'm gonna call it a report, but is there a?
Well, I think Council Bailey is suggesting what is the nature of the enforcement once a new speed limit is, provided, so.
After that, we just forward it to the police services board along with these other concerns to the roads committee, with all those same month. So we're good. And it's your amendment. Yes, absolutely. You second with her. Just comfortable second. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I support it. I think it's a great suggestion.
Yeah. Any comments on that? All in favor? Gotcha. Sorry.
I'm just is this being sent to the police services board or to the OPP director?
Police services board.
Okay.
Just read it out. Questions. Sorry.
So, the council receives the correspondence item, and the council directs staff to resubmit the council resolution from the March 1st, 2023 meeting to County Roads Committee for consideration at the September 2023 committee meeting. And the council directs staff to make a request to the police services board that clarification be provided regarding how speed changes and enforcement will take place.
Right, so we're on to 10.2, take a resolution for that one.
Thank you. That council receives a correspondence item 10.2 regarding the County of Wellington Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee letter to member municipalities and the committee terms of reference. And whereas the Township of Portland supports the changes outlined in the covering letter and Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee terms of reference, but the Township of Portland adopts the terms of reference as presented, and the council directs staff to forward this resolution to the county clerk for their records.
Can you move that, please? Let's suppose, say, Councilor Hurst, comments?
I'm really pleased that, Wilson is going to have their own representative.
Mr. Bailey.
I just made a note, so can staff add this committee to our list of resident involvement for when needed?
No, I think it's great. Just wanted to point out that I think it's great to see the letter from Council Balmer and in the Council Balmer style. He gave us a great history lesson on the makeup of the committee and the achievements. So that was much appreciated as well.
The CAO of the county had the pleasure of working through a new terms of reference for the accessibility committee with Councilor Balmer. As you can all imagine how that went. I heard it went well. Same. All right. All in favor of that? Very. 10.3, Ms. McFarland.
The council receives a correspondence item 10.3 regarding pit license number 62528, Embara Pit, the 2022 annual water monitoring report and peer review prepared by Hardin Environmental. And council directs staff to forward Hardin's report to the pit operator for response and comments.
We have a mover for that, please. Mr. Hurst and Council Bose, questions?
Well, I fully support the motion that be forward to the pit operator. If he has some legitimate concerns that should be addressed.
All in favor? Carried. 10.4.
The council receives correspondence item 10.4 regarding pit license number 17600 PQA Mass Pit 2022 annual monitoring report and peer review prepared by Hardin Environmental for information.
Get moving for that, Mr. Bailey.
Sure.
Seconder, please. Mr. Hurst, any comments? All in favor? It's carried. Council reports. Do I have anything like payment or anything that Oh. Essentially cleanup, or township cleanup day is fast approaching. I was called. Asked if I would hand out my garbage bags this year. That is coming up in May. Sometime anyways, we'll mention it again, but it's always a great turnout by residents and township staff and Mr. Fowler. They provide the roll off bin and collect the garbage, and anyways, it's great day for the township as a whole. Do some tidying, but I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more. Likely May 3rd, have some better details on that, but it is on the horizon. So if you get a black garbage bag in your mailbox with a flyer, the intention is you pick up some garbage in the ditches near your home and leave it on the side of the road at the appropriate, I believe, Saturday. You know what, Mr. Fowler, do you know the details of the cleanup day? Sorry to put you on the spot.
For you, Mr. Mayor, I have had conversations with Councilor Balmer. He's still organizing the event. It will be the first weekend of May.
That's May the 6th.
That's May the 6th of Saturday.
Right on. All right, so by May the 3rd, we'll have more details, but just anybody viewing this from home.
Garbage bags will be out.
Yeah.
Can I ask a semi-related question?
Sure.
So driving along the 401 through Quislinch, there is garbage all along
All the MTO.
401. Yeah, how can we get them on board with our neighborhood cleanup?
I would have serious concerns with anybody other than their
Yeah.
staff picking garbage up on
Yeah.
the 401.
Could staff reach out, let them know we do a township cleanup the first weekend in May, and it would be great if some of their staff would come out and clean up the section through Quislinch. Because it looks terrible on us, and it's, you know, we can't have our kids along the 401 cleaning up garbage, so.
Yeah, we can reach out. I don't think that's. Also. I don't know if they're going to do it again this year, but the province has their own. Litter day. Remember they were pushing that in COVID hit. So if we see that come through any correspondence, then we should highlight the 401 as a good opportunity for their staff or their contractors to be some ready. Any further? You read the resolution and we were seconded, correct?
I know.
Mr. Mayor, it was put on the website, the litter is the second Tuesday of May each year.
Second Tuesday of May, so right after hours, so.
That helps me.
wouldn't hurt to send them correspondence. What do they call it? The action on letter? Act on letter. So staff sent correspondence to who is NECP?
MOE. Not MOE, Ministry of, MOE. Ministry of Transportation.
That does the act on litter, is it through NECP? Ministry of Environment Conservation Parks. Look it up. The appropriate administration. Action on litter, what do they call
Second weekend.
Act on Litter Ontario.
it? Who's sponsored it? Who's sponsored it? What was the name of the act on Ontario?
Act on Litter Ontario.
Just as part of their Act on Litter campaign. The appropriate, I don't know how you want to word it, the appropriate contractor agency. Address the litter. On the roadsides of 401.
That's under Ministry of Environment and Conservation of Parks. NGO owns the water rights.
Right. Let me see. Forward that on to all municipalities. Let's get a resolution that's just circulating through the province. And the second one, they picked up things. Exciting stuff, isn't it?
I'm sorry, do you actually want, to be sent out to member municipalities or just?
401 runs. Dissects the province, and there's other provincial highways.
Not our member. Yeah.
All of them.
Sure.
I'm easy, you guys do what you want to do, but. Sure, if they want to make an act on litter.
Yeah.
And they're promoting throughout the province and
Act on it.
act on it and make it. Start with your staff and start picking up the garbage on your provincial right of ways. Be a leader,
Do it.
Your leader.
lead by example. Oh,
She's not writing that. down.
it's not writing anything down. Clearly not. Sorry, so.
Yeah. All municipalities in Ontario.
Would it be good for a fact if I just throw my water bottle? I don't know, whatever how do you circulate things?
Usually to everyone, yeah.
If you don't mind reading what you captured.
Yep. The council received the mayor and council member updates for information, and the council directs staff to send notice to the MECP requesting that the litter on the roadside of 401 be cleaned up in accordance with the ministry initiative, Act on Litter Ontario, and that this resolution be circulated to all municipalities in Ontario.
Sure, Councilor Smoke. Oh, Councilor Bailey's gonna move it. Any Councilor School seconds, any comments? Look at the good work we did at that. All right. Nope. We're gonna keep on trucking. Mayor, council, mayor, any updates from members of council? Okay. Bylaws, we started bylaws.
That the following bylaws be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw 2023-019, being a bylaw to authorize the temporary borrowing of funds to meet current expenditures of the corporation of the township of Pleasant during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2023. Bylaw 2023-020 being a bylaw to authorize the entering into an animal service agreement with Cambridge and District Humane Society for animal control services for the township of Pleasant. And bylaw 2023-021 being a bylaw to authorize the entering into a shared service agreement with the corporation of the township of Center Wellington for human resources services.
Thank you. I'm gonna move it back, please. Council Bailey. And Council Spoulos. All in favor? That's carried. Announcements we did already. We'll say session, because I have 14-1. Or am I up for all of it? Am I up for all of it or just
No,
14?
Staff are suggesting that we go into close twice. The first time going into close for items 14.2 and 14.3. And then doing 14.1 at the end, which you have your conflict for.
That works. You want to read the resolution, please?
That council should go into closed session under section 239 of the municipal act for the purpose of 14.2 confidential verbal report by staff regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees and human resource matter. And item 14.3 confidential report prepared by staff regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. And this is related to senior of the year nominations.
And move it on, please. Councilor Burst, Councilor Coyle, all in favor? Carried. And we're closed. All right, thank you. Ms. White Fox, you have some resolutions to read, please?
The council moves into open session at 1:27 PM.
Okay, mover for that, please. Mr. Goyda, second by Councilor Spoulos, all in favor? Carried. Next one, Ms. White Fox. Sorry, moved too fast. Apologize.
The council received the confidential verbal report by staff regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and that's relating to a human resource matter. Confidential report prepared by staff regarding potential matters about an identified individual, including municipal or local board employees. And that was relating to senior of the year nominations. And whereas an operational need has been identified for additional clerical support in the municipality on a temporary basis relating to a number of 2023 corporate work plan items, that council authorized staff to retain additional clerical support as required, and that staff proceed as directed and report back at the May 3rd, 2023 council meeting.
Yeah, mover for that, please. Councilor Spoulos, second by Councilor Goyda, all in favor? Carried. I believe now I will hand over the chair of the meeting to Councilor Spoulos. Thank you. You can put it in the call. Do I leave first or do I wait till this?
And Councilor Spoulos, I have a motion or a resolution, sorry, to bring us back into close.
Sure, would you please read the motion?
The council should go into closed session under section 239 of the municipal act for the purpose of 14.1 confidential report prepared by the township solicitor regarding advice that is subject to solicitor client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And this is relating to a human resource matter.
I have a mover, second, moved by Councilor First and second by Councilor Bailey. All in favor?
So, Mr. Chair, I have a motion to move council into open session at 1:52 PM.
I have a mover and a second, moved by Councilor Rich, seconded by Councilor Bailey. All in favor? You.
And another motion that council receives the confidential report prepared by the township solicitor regarding advice that is subject to solicitor client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And this is relating to a human resource matter, and that staff proceed as directed.
So I have a mover and a second, Councilor Gordon moves it, seconded, Councilor Hurst, all in favor? You.
And there's just a number of items left on the agenda. 15 through 19.
Okay, so business arising from the closed session, we've dealt with that, I think it. Fair enough, so let's go to number 16, notice of motion, there's someone want to have a notice of motion. 17 deals with new business, Anyone have any business like to bring in? The staff have any business? Thank you. So then, we'll move it to confirmatory bylaw. Please,
That the following bylaw be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw 2023-022 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council for the corporation of the township of Quistland at its meeting held on the 12th day of April 2023.
have a mover, Council Lewis, second, Council Dorota, all in favor? Good. The last item is adjournment.
Council hereby adjourns at 1:54 p.m.
Okay, I have a mover, Council Lewis, second by Council Bailey, all in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.